Hi, this is Pat Moorhead, and we're back for another episode of the 6-5 podcast. And we are both back in Austin, spent the week in Orlando, two timing events. It was great. We're glad to be here. Daniel, how you doing, man?
Hey, good morning. Hey, don't forget, we went to New York.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm sorry. So many cities, so little time.
I'm just saying, like, don't, I know New York's a little town, but don't forget, we did that. Like,
we did shoot one of our day openers for the 6-5 Summit in New York. It was beautiful. Had a background view of the Empire State Building, stayed in a nice hotel. We were in New York, I think a total of 13 hours.
It was not long. It was a came, we saw, we conquered kind of thing. And it went well, though. And it actually created a pretty great photo op off the wing where we saw, Pat, the sun, the moon, the stars. Maybe your best tweet of the week.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the best tweets of the week have nothing to do with the intelligence that actually goes into them. As
Picture
we
your
had
dog.
discussed. Yes.
Picture your dog, dude. Not to go on a bit of a tangent, but
you're going to go on a tangent.
But yeah, look, is there anything more frustrating than when you really put some thought together? You put some great tweets out, maybe about like Google I/O, where you're really doing some thoughtful analysis and assessment of the state of generative AI, and you bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3, great analysis, all into that character size, and it's like 3 likes.
I know.
And then in the next picture is like, here's me and my bestie sitting awkwardly in chairs. 75 likes.
Yeah.
What the
Here's me hitting myself in the hammer after realizing I'm going to be working on vacation.
Oh, just tweet about
115,000 likes.
Yeah, just tweet about Elon's new CEO. That's fun.
Wouldn't it be great to hire a CEO, Dan?
God, it'd be. Yeah, don't even. I don't want to put anything on the record right now.
All right. Hey, we're getting so off track here. We're sorry, but hey, if it's your first time at the 6-5 podcast, you're familiar with this. If it is your first time, though, we got to wonder kind of what's wrong with you.
What are you doing?
We do cover six topics, a little bit of news, get some context, but we're all about hot takes and analysis. If you want the longer take, go on to our corresponding websites, moorinsightsstrategy.com and the Futurum group, where you can pick one of 14 different companies to get your sauce from. We're going to talk about publicly traded companies too, but don't take anything that we utter, that we're inferencing. Yeah.
I like that.
I like it better than inferring.
Are we training?
So much more fun. Or that we're training. And if you'd look at my portfolio, you would do nothing that you might infer from anything that I say. So, we had a great week. There's so much stuff to talk about. We're talking about IBM Think, Slack GPT, Google I/O event, Tableau GPT, GlobalFoundries and Luminar Earnings. Dan, let's jump in. I'm going to call my own freaking number on IBM Think. So many announcements, so much to talk about, and I'm going to do it in 3 minutes. So a little bit of backstory. When Arvind came in, really the thought of the day, or the leadership statement, said we're going to lead in hybrid cloud and AI. And I totally got the cloud part because, quite frankly, the company had bought Red Hat, right? It makes total sense. They have a hybrid multi-cloud stack that connects with the AWSs, the GCPs, ... But I was always wondering about the AI. Like, was that a bolt-on? Like, I got quantum, right? But AI was like, oh, are you talking about like the old Watson you brought out a decade ago? I don't get it. Well, this event was all about the AI part. It was really the coming out party for generative AI and foundational models. Not that the company hadn't talked about it before with foundational models, not that the company hadn't actually opened up an entire data center that was optimized for AI, but this is really what it was all about. And if I step back, some of the big messages for me was that IBM offers a full stack for AI to clients, right? All the way from the applications in the top, all the way through down to the actual silicon itself, and then everything in between, and then wrapped around services that can help clients if IBM wants to lead them to the water, do that as well. So on the whole, some of the more important elements of their strategy, aside from obviously delivering real client value and their clients, is it's multi-cloud, multi-model, and open model, and those are the three characteristics. And I'm getting to I still have to do a lot of work on really understanding why this needs to be hybrid, because there are companies like AWS who have the end to end. Now, AWS is not putting Outpost capabilities on prem yet, right? So I think you might argue that's not possible. So, company came out with Watson X, which is foundational models for generative AI, has a studio, a data store, and a governance toolkit. Watson Infusion came in as well for code, AI ops, digital labor, security, and sustainability. These are the key access area. A partnership with Hugging Face. Who isn't partnering with Hugging Face? I think everybody's
Hugging
partnering with Hugging Face. What a dumb name.
Although, no,
I just say that.
You can't forget it. Yeah, I had a group chat, Pat, somewhere along the lines where someone said that to me too. I was like in a chat and they're like, so-and-so wants an introduction to so-and-so at Hugging Face. And then the next person was like, God, what a dumb name. Like, but at the same time, like maybe that's it. Like you can't forget it.
Maybe both you and I are too old to appreciate this. Can you imagine? Maybe that's something in your 20s or something in your 30s. I mean, I get what it is. Hugging Face, emoji, yada, yada. But anyways, yeah, I think it's a dumb name. So back to IBM Think. So in the future, here's what I'm going to be Here's what I'm going to be analyzing with this. First of all, speed. Okay. I would say that on the whole, IBM doesn't stand for speed. It's about safety and trust. And can IBM amp up the speed of this? Hey, Bill, to move forward, because that is important. But I do think that IBM won't cross the line on trust. We did hear the parallelization between research and products when we were talking to Dario and Kareem.
Yep.
I thought that was interesting. The second thing I'm going to be looking for is how does it actually operate with the data layer, right? You have Watson X AI data, and my question is are they? I never saw one AWS, GCP, or Azure logo that actually showed that this solution was multi-cloud. I know I heard the word multi-cloud, but I just haven't seen that yet. In the past, IBM has been a little bit afraid to show any of those logos in the past, and then I saw them starting to be infused in. I didn't see a single one of those multi-cloud logos at the show, aside from obviously sponsorships, but not in slideware that made it just absolutely simple that this company is supporting multi-cloud. But again, a lot of research to do. Good time. We spent 3.5 days there. Good show.
Yeah, it was a big moment, Pat, for IBM. I've been writing endlessly about the kind of convergence of enterprise AI. And over the last 2 years, I think there's been a lot of interest in AI in general, Pat. And generative AI has actually been something that we've been experiencing for some time. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but when Google's finishing your sentences in Google Workspace, that is a version of generative AI. The ability for multi-turn conversation that we've been having with Amazon, with our devices, it's still in its early days, but we've been seeing large language models being deployed. Whether it's Jarvis from NVIDIA, that model that they developed some time ago. But the truth is that a lot of the real value of generative AI is unlocked in enterprise data. The enterprise data that we hold, that's in our systems of record, that's in CRM, ERP, in our HCM solutions, within our supply chains, ambient data that exists within our ecosystems. It's video data, it's customer interaction data, CX data. Companies want to build workflows. And with this onset of generative AI that's taken place in the last 6 months, companies want to build sophisticated, proprietary generative AI capabilities where they can add value to products and services that they're bringing to market, as well as deliver better customer and employee experiences within their organizations. IBM is basically standing up and saying, we want to be to enterprise AI what ChatGPT or Google Bard or any of these sort of large language models, Facebook Llama has been to consumer AI. And I say consumer, I just mean user interactions with the open internet. Okay. That's what basically has popularized generative AI. It's the user interaction with search. It's the user interaction with a chatbot that feels very human or a little human, depending on which one you're working with, and more real. Well, the bottom line is this, is that companies have to have the data to train. They have to have the system and fabric to build this on. They have to have the applications to deploy this. And they need some consulting in order to actually figure out how to build these workflows out. It's not as easy as, I know we've heard things about like speech to code, and yes, this is happening. The role of the developer in the future is going to change. The role of the data scientist in the future is going to change because these are models that have the capability to be continually reinforced, learned. And with a company like IBM offering their foundation models, which is basically validated models for different kinds of things, digital labor, IT observability, they have the potential to basically say, you can plug right into this and then put your data, put a layer of your own proprietary data on top of this, a much smaller subset of data. It can cost millions of dollars to train a large language model. So you could take a data set that might be 10% of the size of a traditional data set required to train a large language model, and then you can deploy it on IBM Watson X, and you could therefore implement into your business meaningful generative and AI capabilities on a much lower cost with the architectural support of a hybrid fabric that is Red Hat. And then you can take that all the way to utilization. So that's my both assessment and question mark. The assessment is IBM offered the toolbox. It's literally the toolbox. It's the actual data layer and fabric. And then it's, interestingly, Pat, you didn't mention this much, but the governance. And the governance is really an important thing because we're deploying this so fast. We went from 0 to 1 million in 6 months. And we actually don't have very good policy frameworks and regulation around how we're going to allow this to continue to proliferate into society. So that's super interesting. The Watson governance is going to come later this year. This is not like an entire framework for all governing of AI, but it's kind of within the work you're going to do with Watson X. It's, hey, how do we make sure our model doesn't drift and change and become something we don't want it to be as new data is introduced to it? Governance is going to be able to help with that. So lots going on, Pat. And I think you hit this is the home run comment you made. And, I don't like agreeing with you because I want everyone to think I'm smarter. But in all seriousness, it's speed.
You still do.
It's speed. Speed is the question mark I think we both have. We were in many executive meetings, one-on-ones, conversations with it. And I kind of just kept saying, how fast can you get traction? The hyperscale cloud providers are the biggest threat. And while IBM certainly has partnerships with all of them, you can absolutely be certain that Microsoft is not going to limit its stuff to consumer or search. They're already embedding it into plenty of applications. They're going to make it OpenAI trainable. You can train right on top of it with your own data. How does this versus maybe using like a foundation model plus your own smaller data set, which one develops and delivers better outcomes? The other thing is you're going to see tons of stacking. And with Auto GPT, you're going to see models stacked. So you're going to use Watson plus Open plus Bard plus Llama plus, because you're going to take the best, just like we've seen with Cloud, Pat, and just like we've seen, like you're going to take the best of all these different models and you're going to start gluing them together. And you're going to start inferencing against more and more and more, which is going to drive tons of compute, tons of interest, and tons of excitement. So listen, I'm stoked. Let's go Gen AI. Pat, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 years, maybe you and I can be having the Pat Dan show. while we're still in bed, getting some sleep, some rest, sitting by the poolside. That's what I'm hoping for, because boy, we are moving quick.
It would be great. Based on some technologies that we're going to talk about Google a little bit later, there would be a sign that says machine generated. And I wonder if that's what people want, or do they want the real Pat and Dan? We will see, because I'm looking forward to trying out these technologies.
Hey, Pat.
Yes.
Oh, no, I was saying we should talk more about generative AI on this show.
I know. We really should. Hey, one thing I wanted to sneak in here. I mean, it was all about AI at IBM Think, but they did bring out a pretty incredible set of quantum safe technologies. You may or may not be aware, but there are bad actors who are harvesting data now to be used in the future when they can apply crypto breaking technology to get at that data. And IBM brought out a full array of quantum safe technologies, quantum safe Explorer that looks at source code and object code, quantum safe Advisor, that's essentially a view of cryptographic inventory, quantum safe Remediator. And this is, by the way, is to add to their quantum service that they have that leverages quantum safe cryptography that IBM customers can use today. And, I'm not pumping this just because I was in the press release or anything, but you can also read a lot about it on Paul Smith Goodson's Forbes article. Let's move on and talk about more generative AI, this time Slack GPT from our friends at Salesforce. What's happening here?
I think we were legitimately going to talk about generative AI for like our first 4 straight topics. And then we're going to talk about more AI when we talk about some semiconductor companies, right? So
right.
Can we just change our terms to AI analyst? Because I'm pretty sure that's the next thing. So
I think it's 6.5 GPT. So
sometimes like a company comes early and, they say like being early and being wrong are the same thing. I still remember that. One of my favorite movies is The Big Short. And I love that part when, there's a part where they're arguing about his short on the housing market in 2007. And he's like, I may be early, but I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And then the guy's like, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Because when you're trading, well, this is kind of the condition that is Salesforce is, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now that Mark Benioff really came to the market with Einstein. And the idea was basically that you would have this chat type assistant that, and he actually made some pretty ambitious statements in his early days that you were going to basically have Einstein in the boardroom with you. That you were going to have this AI that's going to be in the room, that you're going to be asking questions, that you're going to be making business decisions. And it's not going to be just your board members. It's going to be your board members plus your machine, and you're going to talk to the machine. You're going to say, hey, do we need to cut staff by 10% in order to meet our cash flow requirements that we're committing in this quarter's earnings report? And you're going to have some AI assistant that's going to do that. Well, it didn't happen very quickly. And there's been a lot of skepticism about Salesforce, but Salesforce has leaned into a partnership with OpenAI, which, by the way, if you ever want to know if someone's partnering with OpenAI versus maybe a different transformer model, just if they use GPT, that almost is certainly means they're training and building on OpenAI. Just FYI for those of you that are out there. But anyways, long and short is for 3 or 4 years, people just said, what the heck happened to Salesforce? They did this thing and like they fell kind of flat, Pat. And now though, the era of generative AI has brought this back to the surface. So what you're seeing now is basically across the whole portfolio. A few weeks back, you saw Salesforce GPT. Now you're seeing Slack GPT. And in a little while, we'll talk about Tableau GPT. And what the company is basically doing is they're adding generative AI to help create automated processes in Slack, code-free, using a workflow builder or a no-code automation tool. You hear what I said earlier about developers, Pat, and their role changing in the future? I just want to reiterate that I'm right. It's very important to me that we get that on the record.
Listen, it's the victory lap is important because we're not always right. We're certainly not going to bring that up.
But, no, we never actually go back and talk about when we're not right.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
Actually, I do on things that really aren't important that nobody cares about anymore.
Yeah.
So
Like sometimes at home, it's like, you're right, honey, I did buy decaf.
yeah.
Anyway, but they give some really great examples in this, but think about like, sales and lead workflows, and by the way, this is very similar to some of the stuff we've seen with Dynamics, with what Microsoft is doing. So the comparative now is that we're starting to see the unwinding of early competitive advantages where you were like, oh my God, we could take a Teams meeting and then we could take the transcript of the Teams meeting, and that would automatically populate something into Dynamics, and then it would create a proposal, and then it would. So now you're seeing that basically, you could have an alert that a new lead came into Sales Cloud. Your GPT can then, take a workflow that, it can take a sales lead to a draft, a personal prospecting meeting, put a document, it can share in the channel. Now, the whole sales team has and visibility into the deal. And they're building this all natively into Slack. So, it's going to get you up to speed faster on messages. It's going to help you prioritize what's important. It's going to help you create HR workflows for new employees to come in, get welcome, get up to speed more quickly on what's going on. It's going to give you better customer data. So it's going to integrate right in with Customer 360, service data. It could do case summaries of service where you get quick abstracts of what's going on with a case. So what's really going on here is that basically all the chat and day-to-day and asynchronous interactions, we're going to get back on a page where you can quickly, with very little to no programming and developer capabilities, get your employees up to speed on service workflows, sales workflows, project workflows, HR workflows. And it's going to be built on a bunch of, pre-created, simple to train sales bot type of interactions. And it's going to be available to all companies using Slack. And now another important point to make, by the way, is there's a lot of interesting integrations across like the Microsoft Salesforce ecosystem. So, while both companies are obviously competing head to head for certain parts of the business, there is a lot of integrations now where things will work. And because of the OpenAI partnership, you'll see more and more integration across that kind of Microsoft Salesforce portfolio. But Salesforce is going for it, man. And they have to. I absolutely believe they have to. But, this is a great indicator that Mark Benioff was actually on the right track for 3 or 4 years ago. But now everything's coming to fruition, and we're going to start to see some really powerful features inside of our day-to-day productivity tools.
Yeah, so good analysis. So context here is that Slack GPT fits into the entire end-to-end AI platform. There are embedded GPT features inside of Slack. And as you mentioned, it is closely correlated with Einstein GPT for overall Salesforce. So my first thought is absolutely expected. You didn't say it this way, but if you think about how Slack started and the ability to invoke different superpowers that it has, you could do many of the types of things that you can do today in Slack GPT, but this just does it better. Okay. Maybe you couldn't do some of the summaries, but if you wanted to order this from a store or get reservations, you could actually invoke one of the bots that were integrated in and actually do this. What this does is it's an easier way to easier and more effective and more powerful way to integrate into these chat services. It's funny. I look back, Dan, and it's almost like Slack was architected or built for this day when you could do almost anything automagically inside of a chat type of motif. And I think you said it well, which is like, okay, these guys have been waiting for this day. But literally, this is everything that the founders of Slack said it would be when they founded the company, right? Now, is it a little bit sad that they're not going to get as much credit for this and that others have kind of stormed in? Kind of. I'm an ex-product person, and you kind of hate to see that. But then again, having to compete with the likes of Microsoft and Google on things like this is just the real world. And that's what ferocious competition is all about. It's going to be interesting to see the antitrust stuff between Slack and Microsoft inside of the EU. And my guess is they're going to use this very example, which says, listen, we were kind of hobbled by Microsoft giving away Teams inside of its E-class licenses for free, and we basically couldn't do this. We didn't grow as quickly as we weren't able to fund this, and therefore had to be acquired for that paltry amount of money that Salesforce paid. Actually, it was
$27 billion.
A lot of freaking money. So, but anyways, this to me is the essence of what Slack was created for, and we have it now, and I can't wait to use it. So, Dan, let's shift topics here, and gosh, we're going to go to a completely different topic, Google I/O, and talk about generative AI. And I love this. So I was not able to go to the event, but I did watch the slideshow on YouTube. So it was pretty good. It was over 3 hours long. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched the parts that I thought were super important. So I'm going to rattle off some of the announcements where there, but holistically, this was all about generative AI and Google's incorporation of it into their products. So first and foremost, Bard is open to everyone. I made a comment that it was a very good sign that Microsoft opened Bing Chat to everybody, and it signaled to me that the company was ahead of the curve. And I mean, that's just a black and white. You open up to everybody, you're making huge commitments, and it's in all your data centers all around the world. You're abiding by international laws for each country. So Bard is now open to everybody. It is not, however, integrated into search, and I'll get to that. Palm 2, which is the new super awesome model, you can compare that to like a GTP 4 type of thing. It's Google's version of it. Said it's already powering Bard and getting better. I wish there was this is your brain on Palm 1. This is your brain on Palm 2, kind of like we see with GPT 4, OpenAI, where you can pick 3, 5, or 4. Next big announcement was Workspace, which is the number 2 productivity and collaboration app across the globe to Microsoft 365. It brought out its own Copilot. I know Microsoft is using that and a couple other people, but it's called Duet AI, and it's doing exactly what you'd expect to do, like create templates and spreadsheets and slides. I am totally jumping on that wait list because our back end is Google Workspace. I'd mentioned before, Dan, the watermarking. Google's introducing automatic watermarking for AI generated content. So, if you think you're going to, crank out a blog, rip off somebody's content, or make people think that not you, I'm talking to the audience here, but you've created this amazing piece of artwork and it was actually cranked out by, something that was generated, or maybe by Adobe Firefly, it's going to let you know. And I actually think that's a good idea. And quite frankly, I think it's going to put quality of content in 2 classes, machine generated and human generated. And I just think that's a good thing. And by the way, sometimes the machine generated content is going to be better than the human generated. Okay. But a really thing to put your eye on. Vertex got an upgrade. That's Google Cloud's end-to-end data pipeline. I'm probably going to write up something on that. Google Search, new look, but flirted the idea of integrating Chat GPT, but not integrated. This is behind of what Microsoft is doing with Bing, that if you go to the Bing search and you do have a question, it will, on the right-hand side, pull in Bing Chat information if it's appropriate. So, I mean, this is not a compliment. I know this if you're at Google, and I say this, but it's just the truth. I think The context was that Google was way behind on foundational models, even though they had written literally the defining paper on it. Okay. And then Microsoft just absolutely comes in torrential speed, puts it into everything, opens it up to everybody beforehand. And just from a timing perspective, Microsoft is ahead. Google stock went down 5%. And then there was another disclosure where the stock went down another 5%. So, taking a beating here, but
it's up more than Microsoft year to date now.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So here's my net. Google made the case that it isn't hugely behind on foundational models for consumers, B2B cloud, or developer. I wish I could give you something more definitive, but they brought out 50 products. Okay. And it takes a long time to digest it. Opening up Bard's a really good sign. Putting it into search would have been a lot more impressive. I still don't know how Google search integrates the foundational models and can afford it. It's one thing when you have very small market share like Microsoft with Bing, and then you can make the case like they did that says every incremental profit dollar is a good thing for the company that I get in advertising. When you're the incumbent, though, and you have a certain profit model, and your story is potentially lose share and increase costs, that's not a good sign. Now, in the last earnings, we talked about CapEx is only going to be up nominally. I just, I don't know the puts and takes. I don't know where they're going to take the money to invest the money, but I am standing by. Dan, what do you think, buddy?
Well, thanks for taking all 7 minutes.
Ooh.
You left nothing. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry, bro.
So listen, first and foremost, Google is back in the eyes of the street. This event was big for the company. After it kind of got some upgrades and rallies, the actual stock was up more for the year than Microsoft, at least at some point yesterday following Google I/O. So what does this mean? I think it means that message well received. Now, Google took immense criticism for its reactive, response to GPT and Microsoft's announcements with Bard, and then it kind of fell on its face. So you're absolutely right there. Having said that, this is really a classic buy versus build story. Microsoft bought the hottest, prettiest, best looking, and brought it to the prom. Google had been in a lab building, developing, investing, and wasn't ready, at least wasn't totally ready, and has been forced to continue to accelerate its build structure and come out with something new. The opening Bard to everybody was a really good sign. But remember, when you open up Bard, it says experiment right next to it. And I was talking to a journalist about this yesterday, and I said, really, the whole internet's an experiment. I said, if you think about it, everyone's like, well, what if the information's not correct? Well, right now when you search, you then choose your own adventure, and then you click on something, and then you're like, I'm going to source this, and you're like, how the heck do you know that was right? So, I think the entire experience is just a sort of the evolution of the internet experiment. And I think for Google, you may as well roll it out, start training on it, building more utilization. Now, I totally agree with you. Having Bard exist in sort of a parallel versus having it immediately integrated into search, I think it does a couple of things. One is using Palm versus Bard, these different large language models for generating. It gives them the ability to do some A/B testing. It also gives them the ability to train in parallel, and then it gives the opportunity to stack models to create value, because I'm betting you each model probably has its pros and cons. So now you're seeing it actually, building a multi-model experience, kind of delivering different user experiences inside of Bard versus Google search, allowing people to stay within their familiar search that is Google. And by the way, Google has so much search volume compared to Bing at this point. The expense would have to be astro-freaking-nomical if they were going to immediately open up generative and use it at the same capacity that Bard is for every search inquiry they get. Remember, like 90% of society probably has no idea generative is even a thing yet. As much as we think it's everywhere, Pat, that's just because that's what we do. It's our world. It's the people we're around. And yes, our parents are aware of it, but I don't know that they care yet that they get generative responses inside of Google. They've just become, my folks have just become comfortable using traditional Google search at this point. Like, it's moving really, really quickly. I think in time it'll get picked up. Pat, I think the Duet stuff, is that what it's called? Duet?
Yeah.
That's killer. Because we are also a workspace backend. Look, I write things. I would love to see them quickly be turned into slides. I love to, I am the worst PowerPoint creator on the planet. I mean, if you want to talk about making ugly slides, have me create your next slide. It is horrible. But just anything that can be done to sort of create and expedite productivity is really, really sweet. I think some nice upgrades to Android in terms of capabilities. And then also it's kind of interesting, Pat, they quietly revamped or relaunched their home app. And this is kind of a weird thing because, I've been wondering whether it's been Apple Home, whether it's been Google Home, whether, Amazon, like everybody kind of wants to build the smart home, but nobody's really gotten that yet. Is Google the company that could do that? I don't know. I have a fairly smart home here. Lighting systems and drapes and things like that are on control and using a system called Savant. I mean, look, there's not a great home control system, but with everything being connected to the internet, it really should be by now. So that's a weird one, but I thought it was kind of cool that they brought that back to the surface. But listen, make no mistake, this was a AI event about the AI search, about AI in apps, about AI in their phones and AI in their devices. And, I guess what I would walk away with is Google's on the track. And you and I say this all the time. I'm going to say it again. We're going to get on to the next thing. So we're going way too slow. Is that AI and competition is good. We want competition in this space. So, all right, I'm going to pause there so we can keep this thing moving.
No, good way to end on a competitive front. Dan, let's move into the next topic. Surprise! Tableau GPT, Tableau owned by Salesforce.
I always feel like we could have consolidated this to Slack and Tableau into one, but I guess each deserves their own moment here. But I'm not going to let this one.
No, this is exactly what they would have wanted.
Right?
No, this different brands, different sub companies, different CEOs, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying for us.
I got you, bro.
So I'm going to make this kind of brief here, right? So Tableau, on the other end, so Slack is more that user interface every day. Well, Tableau is kind of that like decision driving engine of a company, right? If you're a CEO, Tableau is that visualization, that dashboard, insights that you would need to run your company, run your business unit, run your sales team in a very concise way. So, I guess the company is now, just like we've been talking about with Microsoft, looking across their portfolio and all the different products. So sales, the data with Tableau, Slack with chat. And they're basically looking to say, how do we make GPT and OpenAI capabilities enable companies to make better decisions? And the bottom line is that, that is the number one use case that IT leaders believe, over 80% of IT leaders believe that generative AI's biggest opportunity is to help organizations make better use of data. I'll file that under like kind of obvious, but at the same time, what's going on is companies have these vast data ecosystems, and how do you utilize that technology in something like a GPT, something like a generative, to say, we're going to pull from all the data sources in a very comprehensive way, using natural language to query to get a visualization of what you need to know in a really short order. And that's really what Tableau GPT is going to enable. It's going to enable faster decision, more personalized analytics. It's going to, basically give more capabilities for decision makers to get the dashboard they want. So if you're building Tableau historically, you needed kind of a developer, or at least someone that understood low code to a good extent, to develop a dashboard for you. But when you wanted to basically get any inquiry or insight that was not part of your dashboard, it was really hard. So think about being able to query your business analytics system the way we are querying a Bard or ChatGPT or Bing with generative to say, hey, I want to know how many refrigerators we sold in the UK between January and March of this year. So while you may have had a dashboard that was full year to date, you just wanted to see 3 months, and then you wanted to see it by a salesperson, or then you wanted to see it by a region or by a certain retailer store, or the ability to use NLP, natural language generative, to get those dashboards updated in real time is huge for executive decision making. Goes back to what I said about Benioff saying you're going to have Einstein in the boardroom. This is that kind of insight with analytics, with data visualization, that becomes the genius in the boardroom that can instantaneously get you those numbers. If you ask anyone on our team at Futurum, I ask these kinds of questions all the time. How much did we sell year to date to this customer versus how much have we sold this year to date? These are things that are buried in your CRM. They're buried, like, it's never been impossible to get, Pat. It's just been really a big pain in the rear end to be able to pull it up. And it ends up taking time from someone that could be doing something else, and now they can be doing this.
That was a great breakdown, Dan. So a couple things here. This Tableau GPT is based on Einstein GPT technology, as you would expect. A little bit confusing having different names across different products. My guess is, or my hope is, that if you have customers that are using the entire Salesforce suite, I don't think you want different. You don't want Slack GPT, Tableau GPT, Einstein GPT. I don't like that move, but that's branding. And I think it got us to talk about, I think we've talked about Salesforce flavors of GPT 3 times now. So mission accomplished, marketing folks. One thing that I wanted to point out too is this is not pulling data from the internet. This is not pulling data that has been trained publicly on the internet. This is information coming directly from your enterprise. So anything that's in Salesforce Customer 360, it gets access to that. Any place that you had previously pointed Tableau to pull this in, it will work across all of those platforms. And, I said on Slack GPT, this was kind of what it was made for. Tableau, if you look at what GPT is adding to it, it's making Tableau better, right? When Tableau first came out, essentially it was intelligently, through analytics technologies, being able to, you could script different queries to make it easier. It did have the ability to ask questions, but what came back based on analytics and machine learning wasn't all the best. So this is supersizing it. This should, I haven't used this, I've seen some videos on it, but should lead to better answers more quickly. And at the end of the day, that's what a tool like Tableau is made for, is to pull in the best data when you need it and keep people like Daniel Newman, if you have to work for him, very happy. And
sorry about that.
Nothing at all. I mean, whether you're Daniel Newman or a PC company that wants to know how many notebooks and the revenue acceleration and profitability in Malaysia in the third quarter, you should get that information, as opposed to having to go out to an analyst who has a giant spreadsheet, has to put together some data and pull it in. So I like it. Very consistent with some of the data plays that we've seen from the other folks, whether it's BI or some stuff from Oracle. Dan, let's move into the earnings segment, and that is GlobalFoundries. I am going to pick my own number on this. For those of you who might not be aware, GlobalFoundries is the largest international foundry out there, defined by being in as many countries as they're in. They're not as big as TSMC, but they're very focused on that. So for the quarter, they beat on EPS, they met/beat on revenue, and the thing that's weighing on the stock right now is a light guide. And it's the first time in a long time I've even seen sequential declines from the company in revenue, gross margin percent, and earnings percent. But listen, it's everything the company told you before. There's a I read the transcript, and Tom basically, said, hey, we anticipated that the first half and the first quarter would be the low point in revenue and the peak of the inventory cycle, and basically it happened. And the declines is exactly where you would expect, right? Smartphones, big dollar declines, and the company is a big supplier of analog chips like RF that go into these phones, particularly on the Android side. PCs, huge decline as a percent, but it's not really a big dollar value. At some point, I'm pretty sure GlobalFoundries will take that out. That's really historical based on the business that they used to do with AMD. IoT, which currently combines consumer and commercial, that was down. And if I could guess, the biggest decline was on consumer, and they probably didn't have big declines in industrial. They were up exactly where you'd expect. Automotive. I don't know of a single automotive chip supplier or foundry that's down. Now, I do think the automotive gravy train is likely going to slow down a little bit, because I feel like we're in a catch-up mode right now. And when I balance that across internal combustion engines, I look at the interest rates that are going sky high, that will disincent new buyers from coming into the market. That could be the last one to go. But it is good to see, because the foundries are the canary in the freaking coal mine, how they did so well. Now, the final comment that I thought was positive. They signed 5 long-term agreements worth $1.4 billion in revenue, and LTAs are an important thing because they're basically guaranteed revenue, and you get guaranteed slots in the foundry. So overall, exactly what you would have expected from GlobalFoundries.
Yeah, I'll hit this one pretty quickly, Pat. I mean, look, we knew smartphones would be down. We knew PCs would be down. We knew consumer IoT would be substantially down. What we're sort of watching is the turn pivot for data center. Automotive's been rock solid. That's got a lot more to do with the never caught up from the supply chain. And then, of course, you've got an industry where vehicles are significantly more semiconductor intensive than they used to be. So every car is getting more and more chips in it. So even if we sell less volume, you'll see the manufacturers, the semiconductor players in the automotive space all perform better. GlobalFoundries is unique. It handles a lot of the lagging process. So what a lot of people still don't realize, and even though we've talked about it, God knows how many times on this show, Pat, this was a big part of where the actual chip shortage became a problem. And so Global has benefited significantly from it throughout, because they were always at capacity, selling through every single chip they could manufacture. So we finally sort of seen that come home to roost. And that's led to some year-on-year declines. But I think, as you said, the company had a good handle on where it's at. This sort of seems to match what we're hearing from Qualcomm, some of what we heard from Pat Gelsinger at Intel, some of what we've heard from Lisa Su. We seem to be hovering around the bottom right now. And it seems that most feel that inventory glut is starting to be sold off, that we're starting to move directionally into a next wave of increased revenue, which I think will have to be accelerated by all this AI momentum. And that's one of the things I keep saying, all the AI that we want to embed in new phones and new PCs to support data center servers, to make cars smarter, is going to mean we're going to have another wave of replacement cycles. When you want to edge a new PC that's going to be able to do edge inference, you're going to see a new chipset that's going to come into these devices over the next 1 or 2 years. And then that's going to create a forced upgrade cycle for people that want to be able to take advantage of new capabilities. So for a long time, there hasn't been a new sort of gotta have it capability. There was more of a, oops, we're all going to work from home thing that led to a lot of PCs being bought. That's just a for instance. But, to do all this generative AI, we're going to have data center build outs to a pretty massive scale. Companies like GlobalFoundries have critical components to complete products. And so they will be along for the ride, even though they're not necessarily the one building on 3 or 5 nanometer technologies that everybody gets really excited about. So congratulations, I guess, to Global for surviving this really rough period of time for semiconductor companies. It seems that they were able to push their margins up a little bit, which is a good thing. Because when you sell less, you at least want to always try to make more. So, all right, let's keep going, Pat, because I'm almost at time, and I think we both have to run at the hour.
Speaking of automotive, Luminar had their earnings. Luminar, high-flying LiDAR company, growing 100% plus a year. Dan, how'd they do?
Yeah, so I mean, look, they doubled revenue. They shrunk their loss. I think they lost a little more than was expected. But this is a story about design, and this is a story about adoption. I want to be very clear. Luminar is, they're doing $14 million in revenue, which again, not small, but most of these companies we talk about when we talk about earnings, we're talking about billions of dollars in revenue. So why is this so relevant? This is really more about a massive shift in adoption of new LiDAR or new multi-sensing technology that's going to exist in vehicles. So while you have a company that did 14.5 million in revenue this quarter and grew significantly, you're talking about a tiny number of volume in these automotive deals, but you're talking about design win. This is a company that won a design agreement with Mercedes. This is a company that won a design agreement with Volvo. This is a company that's won a design with the new Polestar. This is a company that's got a number of different vehicles in China that are committing to using its technology. And LiDAR is, Pat, and we've shown the demonstration many times, just more capable of offering the sensing technology that's going to be required for true driverless and next generation ADAS capabilities. So what I keep saying is, if you're really an investor in a company like Luminar, looking at the quarter to quarter revenue growth is one indicator, but looking at the designs and the number of design wins and when those design wins are most likely to come to fruition, much like what we've seen with Qualcomm. Their revenues in the hundreds of millions, but their design win pipelines in the billions, you're going to see a similar trajectory. Well, this right now is Luminar's core focus area. When these new designs get ramped up and come to market, you're going to see scale of revenue, scale of volume, and scale of the company's growth. So the fact they're being picked, chosen, and even at this size, to me, was the most important thing. And that's what I look for in every earnings report.
Good breakdown, Daniel. Some of the adders, I think it's important to reinforce that this is a startup with massive growth that happens to be public. What's unique about the company? Well, it's actually shipping. And if I look at other companies being able to ship compact, high performance LiDAR, they just don't exist. And therefore, when the company does not just break ground on a facility, but open it and start producing, that is a big deal. And the company is already set up globally to create a ton of these devices for their Western and Chinese customers. So that's 100%. And this is why, their competitors are clawing all over them and complaining and, sometimes making up information about the company. Volvo and Mercedes would not choose the company if it weren't the safest, most credible, accurate technology out there. So, and they're long-term agreements. So you're going to be able to take advantage of the being first price, which is always higher margin than the trail. And, if you're Mercedes, any car company that has a decent brand, like you want to save like $5 and take a risk to kill passengers or have recalls, it's just not worth it. You kind of go with the best, particularly in the beginning, and then what you see as markets mature, they get cheaper and move down the cost curve, and then the people who deliver premium technology are on to the next premium thing. So, Dan, great show. Good to see you. I'm going to be gone for a while. I'm going to miss you. I don't even know if I can do the pod next week, but we'll see.
We'll see if we figure it out. And I just want to give a shout out to my daughter, Haley, graduating from college tomorrow. I'm proud of you, girl. Keep rocking.
That's so nice. And happy Mother's Day to everybody out there.
Oh, yeah, that too.
If you are on this planet, you can thank your mom, which is basically everybody. So don't be a dork. contact your mom, regardless of what kind of relationship you might have with her. If she has passed like mine, just have good conversations about her. Remember the best. She's your mom, and that will never change. So with that, thanks for tuning in wherever you are on the planet. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Take care. We appreciate you. Hit that subscribe button.